Considering how so many people dislike this one, at least people will find solace that the series got better. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel and the return of my James Bond review series. I've been slacking on discussing Daniel Craig's run as Bond after my Casino Royale review, since, as I discussed in a previous video, I did start to get a little burnt out with making videos for a bit, and I wound up pushing it off. I mean, at this point, we're well past the release date of No Time to Die. But I still had plans to do these reviews, and I want to make up for some lost time, and we're going to quickly get through the rest of Daniel Craig's Bond movies. And we're picking things back up with his second film, Quantum of Solace. So before we begin, let me know in the comments what your thoughts on Quantum of Solace were if you've already seen it, as well as make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like these reviews, as it helps me out immensely by getting my content out there. And if you're new here, I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with reviews of new releases, older films, hidden gems, and so much more on a near daily basis. But let's not waste any more time, and let's talk about Quantum of Solace. This sees James Bond descend into mystery as he tries to stop a mysterious organization from eliminating a country's most valuable resource. So unlike a lot of other Bond movies, this one is a direct sequel. It picks up right where Casino Royale left off, and it finds Bond out for revenge against the organization that was behind Vesper Lynd's death in that film. So Bond, already in a vulnerable place during the events of Casino Royale, is now even more volatile here than he was before. Now, it's worth noting that this was made in the midst of the writer's strike in 2007 and 2008. A draft by Paul Haggis was completed 2 hours before the strike began, and then both Daniel Craig and director Mark Forster had to take it upon themselves to do rewrites so they can fill in the gaps. Something that I'm not sure they truly needed to do. I don't quite understand why this just wasn't delayed until after the strike was over. As Craig said, he and Forster struggled with the screenplay. It doesn't seem like there would have been any repercussions had they just delayed it. But they pushed through, though unfortunately the struggles that Craig and Forster experienced all throughout this shows. Now, I will say that I don't dislike this movie. I know some people flat out despise it, but I'm not in that camp. I'm actually fine with it overall. However, I would be lying if I didn't say how this is certainly a huge step down from Casino Royale. We go from one of the most emotional Bond movies, quite possibly the best one of all time, to something that feels so void of the things that made Casino Royale enjoyable. It's considerably darker, lacking in jokes, and the story is one of the most forgettable Bond stories in some time, and easily the most forgettable of the Craig films. This is supposed to be an emotionally charged revenge tale about Bond looking to get justice for Vesper, yet by the end of it, this feels like it was so far removed from just about anything pertaining to Casino Royale. Now, we do revisit plot points, characters, and some themes that were present in that movie, but it just doesn't feel as cohesive this time around. It kind of plays into what my general problems are with most generic spy movies, as this typically isn't one of my go-to genres or subgenres. We'll get a lot of name dropping and references to locations, but a lot of it won't feel like it actually adds up to anything of substance. At times, it'll feel hollow, and all these references don't really go anywhere. I've always heard this particular movie compared to the Bourne franchise, which is one that I always thought was fine, but didn't quite love the way so many others do. And I'd say that's actually a pretty fair comparison, especially since they did hire Dan Bradley as the second unit director, and he also worked on The Bourne Supremacy and Ultimatum. It goes for an overall gritty feel, with a lot of shaky cam and close-ups, with a considerably more desaturated color palette than Casino Royale. In some ways, it feels like something out of another movie series. It almost tonally doesn't line up with its predecessor. Now, does it mean this movie's bad? Well, for me, no. I know a lot of people really don't like this one, and it certainly doesn't hold a candle to Casino Royale, but I really don't think this is bad. I think of this one in the same way as I did X-Men The Last Stand, which was out 2 years prior to this. Because both films were stripped of a lot of the emotion that was present in the previous films of their respective franchises. However, they both still work as somewhat mindless action movies, even though that's not what made each respective series so great in the first place. For this, while this is less stylish than Casino Royale in terms of its action, I don't mind it. This film's been especially criticized for how dark its violence can be, but I found it solid for what it was. Now, unlike a lot of other Bond movies, the action scenes are the domineering force here. Like, every other scene is a wild-looking action stunt that tries to go big, even though the movie itself ultimately feels small in scale. And I can honestly see why people would have a problem with it being too bogged down in action when there just isn't that emotional core there, especially considering how it's right after something as emotional as Casino Royale. But I enjoyed it for what it was. I would have liked had there not been such an emphasis on the gritty edge that went into it, but they at least served as some solid popcorn entertainment. And I don't mind popcorn entertainment if it's done well. And I'd be lying if I said I thought the action here was bad, because to me, it wasn't. The other thing that made this work enough for me is, of course, Daniel Craig himself. While the film as a whole lacks the overall charm that Casino Royale had, Daniel Craig's performance is at the very least consistent between the two films, and he was one of the only ones here who was consistently charismatic. Even though the story feels lost in trying to find some emotional core, Craig at least does his best at trying to center the film, even if his attempts aren't completely successful due to the story feeling disjointed. And you'll still feel something for Bond here. Now, similar to The Last Stand, it's mainly due to the emotional groundwork that was laid by the much better previous film, in this case Casino Royale, that helps with keeping you invested in Bond and staying tuned till the end, at least for me. Because even though, as I said, how things were unfolding, I wasn't quite as invested, because of how much I connected to Craig's Bond from Casino Royale, and because I knew this was a continuation of that journey, and because of all the efforts Craig was giving here, I at least wanted to know how things will play out here, if that makes sense. And that, along with all the action scenes, made this entertaining enough for me. Now, I know that isn't the case for everyone. Having just one or two consistently strong elements can either make or break a film. In some cases, while there are only so many things that worked about a film, they're so strong that they're enough to carry it. But in other cases, the elements that don't work were just so weak that they undermine whatever positive qualities the film had. And in this case, I know there are quite a few people who fall on the latter side of this movie, and I totally get it. For me, though, I lean towards the former. I don't think this movie is that bad, as I said. Now, to be clear, it's not exactly great, and it is lacking in some of the more notable elements that make James Bond movies feel like James Bond movies. Like both the Bond girl, Camille Montes, played by Olga Kurylenko, and the Bond villain, Dominic Green, played by Matthew Almerac, are completely forgettable. There's only so much chemistry between Kurylenko and Craig, and honestly, I couldn't remember one interesting thing about Green, other than that he's a generic evil mastermind that I wouldn't be able to pick out of a random crowd. Plus, the theme Another Way to Die by Jack White and Alicia Keys, while fine, just wasn't up to par with some of the other Bond themes. And not having some of those classic Bond elements are, of course, incredibly disappointing, and they're a big reason why this movie is the black sheep of all the Craig Bond movies. But for me, Craig still does such a solid job, and the action is very consistent and done well enough that I felt it made up for a lot of this film's weaker elements. Quantum of Solace is without a doubt a huge step down from Casino Royale, though one that I don't think is quite horrible. While it's certainly disappointing that we don't get classic Bond elements and that the story does feel incredibly disconnected from Casino Royale, despite it being a direct sequel, Daniel Craig, as always, does a great job as Bond once again, and we can still feel invested in what happens to this character. While it's dominated more by its action than its story, and the action isn't as slick as Casino Royale, I still found it enjoyable for what it was, and it makes for fun enough popcorn entertainment, even if that's not what Bond's really supposed to be all about. Quantum of Solace gets a 7 out of 10. And if you disagree, I get it. I understand why people don't like this one, but I found it to be fine. I've enjoyed it each time I watched it, even if it's not exactly on par with any of the other films. But in the meantime, we'll keep this going, as up next will be my review of Skyfall. Though, let me know, did you see Quantum of Solace, or are you planning to see it, and what were your thoughts? Did you think it was as bad as everyone says it was, or do you actually not mind this one? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching, everyone, and keep having fun with film.